This much we know. Senator Barack Obama knew and worked with Bill Ayers back in his Chicago days. Beyond that, almost everything is in dispute. Now Greg Jarrett tries to sort things out.
So, in the Bill Ayers saga, where does Barack Obama fit in? Nobody has been digging harder for the answer than Stanley Kurtz, senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. His expertise is library research. He found obscure documents buried in university libraries that got him onto the subject of Obama and Ayers, which he has been researching now for several months.
How did William Ayers and Barack Obama come to know one another?
Barack Obama now says he first met Bill Ayers in 1995 when he was introduced to Ayers as part of the process of becoming the chairman of a foundation called the Chicago Annenberg Challenge.
A foundation with up to $150 million to fund education proposals in the city. Later that year, Obama decided to run for the Illinois State House. William Ayers and Bernadine Dorn hosted a meet-and-greet party in their own home. Obama won, but continued running the Annenberg Challenge, which Kurtz says favored projects that reflected Bill Ayers' hard-left views.
Here's what William Ayers wrote. Teachers should be community organizers dedicated to provoking resistance to American racism and oppression.
Bill Ayers really was focused on building up the loyalty of minority groups to their own ethnic heritage and downplaying traditional American patriotism.
Ayers and Obama also worked together on the board of the Woods Foundation, a Chicago nonprofit that gave money to community organizers, including Acorn. Acorn received $240,000, the money John McCain was talking about in the last presidential debate. All the while, Ayers left no doubt he was unrepentant about his past.
Not only that, he's actually proud of it.
In a 1998 national TV interview, Ayers and his wife, Bernadine Dorn, reaffirmed that what they did was right.
We were romantic, we were foolish, we made mistakes.
And we'd do it again.
Then, in 2001, Ayers published his unapologetic memoir, Fugitive Days. To promote it, he did an interview with the New York Times that was coincidentally published the morning of the 9/11 attacks. In it, he said, quote, "I don't regret setting bombs. I feel we didn't do enough." William Ayers tried to soft-pedal the comments he made to the New York Times. He had no idea they would run on the very morning of the worst terrorist attack on American soil in U.S. history, and on the morning that heroic passengers on board United Flight 93 died, preventing a devastating attack on the nation's capital, the same building that William Ayers targeted 3 decades earlier. Ayers has never renounced his views or the radical ideology behind them.
There's no remorse.
Oh, no, absolutely no remorse. The United States is still an imperialist, racist country, and the capitalist system is doomed to fail. It oppresses people all over the world.
Fox News correspondent James Rosen learned that as well when, in 2004, he interviewed Ayers on audio tape for Rosen's book on the Nixon years, The Strongman, John Mitchell, and the Secrets of Watergate. In speaking to Rosen, Ayers stated his belief that America was just as evil as the people who attacked us on 9/11.
Was that an act of pure terror? It absolutely was. And there are many other acts of terror carried out by our government, even recently, that are comparable.
When you're a Chicago community organizer or representing the South Side in the State House, your relationship with someone like William Ayers doesn't draw a lot of national attention. But when Barack Obama became a U.S. Senator and almost immediately began running for president, that same relationship became something else, much more problematic.
Can you explain that relationship for the voters?
This is a guy who lives in my neighborhood, who's a professor of English in Chicago, who I know and who I have not received some official endorsement from. He's not somebody who I exchange ideas from on a regular basis. And the notion that somehow, as a consequence of me knowing somebody who engaged in detestable acts 40 years ago when I was 8 years old somehow reflects on me and my values doesn't make much sense, George.
More recently, after McCain and Palin started making an issue of Ayers, Obama expanded his explanation.
Ultimately, I ended up learning about the fact that he had engaged in this reprehensible act 40 years ago, but I was 8 years old at the time, and I assumed that he had been rehabilitated.
Stanley Kurtz doesn't buy it.
It is so hard to believe that Barack Obama would not have heard from all of Bill Ayers' friends and supporters at this foundation about what his history was.
We need to know the full extent of that relationship.
As expected, in the last presidential debate, the candidates went nose to nose on Bill Ayers.
And you launched your political campaign in Mr. Ayers' living room.
That's absolutely not true.
And the facts are facts and records are records.
That's not the fact.
And it's not the fact that Senator Obama chose to associate with a guy who in 2001 said that he wished he'd bombed more.
Mr. Ayers has become the centerpiece of Senator McCain's campaign over the last 2 or 3 weeks. This has been their primary focus. So let's get the record straight. Bill Ayers is a professor of education in Chicago. 40 years ago, when I was 8 years old, he engaged in despicable acts with a radical domestic group. I have roundly condemned those acts. 10 years ago, he served and I served on a school board that was funded by one of Ronald Reagan's former ambassadors and close friends, Mr. Annenberg. Other members on that board were the presidents of the University of Illinois, the president of Northwestern University, who happens to be a Republican, the president of the Chicago Tribune, a Republican-leaning newspaper. Mr. Ayers is not involved in my campaign. He has never been involved in this campaign, and he will not advise me in the White House. So that's Mr. Ayers.
Ayers hasn't said a word. For the first time in his life, his lips are closed till November 4th. He's under Democratic Party discipline for the first time in his life.
Should Americans be concerned about the relationship between Barack Obama and William Ayers?
I think they should. Bill Ayers, of course, is an incredibly radical fellow. It isn't just that Bill Ayers committed these acts of terrorism in the 1960s. He really kept to the same philosophy he had back then, years and years later. Bill Ayers believes that the United States is an inherently racist and oppressive country.
There are two Bill Ayers. There's the guy who was the weatherman, and then there's the guy who's the professor and the community gadfly and the activist.
Richard Epstein is a conservative law professor at the University of Chicago Law School, where Obama lectured for almost a decade. They were colleagues and neighbors as well. And for the record, Epstein supports John McCain. But he believes that all this talk about Obama's link to Bill Ayers is ridiculous.
I mean, I know them both. You cannot find people who are more disparate with respect to temperaments. I think the part of Ayers that Barack liked is the part of Ayers which was a community organizer and somebody interested in childhood education. I think most people in Hyde Park think that way.
You don't think William Ayers and Barack Obama may share some sort of radical ideas?
No. I mean, all the times that I've spoken with Barack, I've never seen the slightest influence that Ayers has had on him.
I mean, this is a guy who said, I only regret we didn't set more bombs.
Look, I don't want to defend any of the things. The essential question is not who Barack's friends are. What I'm worried about is who his advisors are.
Is anyone who sat on a board or even socialized with William Ayers disqualified from holding high public office?
Sitting on a board together, not necessarily, but if what you're doing on that board is sending hundreds of thousands of dollars over to Bill Ayers and his radical education projects, then I would raise an eyebrow.
People could actually ask the same questions of me and find out that I too am in league with Bill Ayers.
Bill Ayers was a terrorist. Barack Obama worked with him on 2 boards.
Right.
Do you think Barack Obama shares the radical ideas of Bill Ayers?
No, I don't.
Why not?
You know, he's clearly on the left. He's clearly a liberal. He has the most liberal voting record in the Congress. Did he really buy into Ayers' total view of America as, you know, as the evil empire? I don't think so.
That said, Saul Stern, the writer, who started all those years ago on the left with Ayers and the rest, still thinks there is much about Barack Obama and his relationship with the 60s radical that voters need to know.
Well, the voters can't decide that question, whether it disqualifies him or not, unless they have full facts about it. We should have the full facts about it, just as we ought to have the full facts about any presidential campaign.